Welcome to another episode of City Talk, where we try to figure out what these people do around here all day. Some of the people work at the Commission on Human Relations, and one of them is Rita Porterfield, and she joins us on City Talk. Rita, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming. So let's get to the obvious question. What is the Commission on Human Relations?
The short answer is we enforce the city's anti-discrimination law, and we do that in the realms of housing, employment, and public accommodations. So when you're going down to Giant Eagle or something like that. But shopping stores, that's something I think people think very, very little about, but it's very common in their everyday life. Also city services.
All right, so if I go to a landlord and I think they don't want me to rent from them because I'm 107 years old and I think it's age discrimination, I go to you.
Well, first of all, let me say you're looking pretty good for 107. But
Well, thank you.
yeah, so that is a protected class. So
Okay.
40 and up is
40 and up?
Yeah,
Really?
40 and up. Yeah, it's well, the law got passed at the same time as the employment.
Mm-hmm.
So if 40 stayed housing and employment, so it's the same in both of those realms.
So there's a million other kinds of discrimination, I'm sure. Detail some of them for us, if you would.
Sure. Pittsburgh is unique. It's actually fairly progressive in what it protects, and it protects more than federal and state laws. It protects particularly housing rights on survivorship of domestic violence. So if you've survived being in a domestic partnership or relationship, there's age that we discussed, so 40 plus. There's exceptions for like senior care homes or senior homes,
Okay.
so they have a special carve out there. Sex or sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, ancestry, race, and all of those things are unique and separate. Place of birth, color, religion. I think I'm actually missing one. Oh, and disability.
Okay.
And it's probably the biggest that we see, and disability includes use of a service or support animal.
So is disability the largest number of complaints that you get?
It is followed by race.
Okay.
And sometimes you can get, like you can be discriminated against in more than one way. So, or some things that seem similar are actually different. So more than one way is if I'm a certain race and I have a disability and I believe I've been discriminated on both.
So how do you go about investigating that? It seemed to me it would be difficult to prove. Even if I discriminated based on either one, I could just claim, well, no, so-and-so had a better job and he was more likely to pay the rent.
It's hard to find that, and source of income is not protected yet, but it's one of the things actually in the works.
Okay.
And it's sort of back in the hopper because of court cases going different ways that Superior Court's going to have to resolve. But back to your question, if you believe you've been discriminated against, you come to our office, you work with our intake officer, and you file a complaint. The complaint comes to me, the investigator, and I look for a respondent's answer. So it's like court pleadings in that sense. Mm-hmm. So there's a complaint, there's an answer filed, right? So what the complainant said and then what the respondent said. And usually we find the truth somewhere to be in the middle. So it's never, you know, a very black or white issue. And there is a lot of gray. Or what we have is there's a lot of hidden motives sometimes. So we have to suss through that. Now, what I do, I can subpoena documents. I can go collect evidentiary documents. I can collect or ask for data based on race or other demographic information, because a lot of times is what I'm looking to see is if you're being treated fairly.
Can you force a landlord then to accept this person, and is that dangerous because you're going to have a lousy relationship with your landlord from day one?
Well, it's not so much.
Or is it more like fining the landlord?
It's not quite like fining in that the complainant actually gets the relief. Like a fine just goes to court costs or mm-hmm. something like that. The person hurt actually doesn't see the money. We have a couple of cases actually where the discrimination is based on use of a service animal or a support animal. So emotional support animals in the city of Pittsburgh are the same thing as a service animal.
So even if you don't take pets, you have to take one of those?
Yes,
okay.
And it's more expansive, so I should be detailed in that. Service animals under federal regs can only be dogs, and usually we think of seeing eye dogs. That's the most common example. Mm-hmm. Now we have animals that are trained to do certain things, and they might not be dogs, and they might do things like sense a panic attack coming
Okay.
or a seizure or something like that. So we see a lot of this, like, I have a no pet policy and I apply that to everyone. Well, if you denied this person because they came to you and said, I have a support animal, I have a disability, you don't have to disclose your disability, and this is why a support animal helps me or relieves these symptoms.
But they would also have to prove to you that the complainant, that the service animal is legitimate. You couldn't have a service animal aardvark, I would assume.
Well, you could if,
Really?
again, if the aardvark does those things that,
okay.
that aid in the disability and it's documented. And there's all kinds of federal regulations and actually new guidance on how animals can be demonstrable service or companion or support animals.
So are you flooded with complaints as an agency?
No, we're a pretty small department.
Okay.
And although I will say we actually predate federal existence and civil rights legislation. So we're very old for what we do.
But so before the 60s?
Yeah.
Okay.
1955, I believe,
right.
is when our commission was founded. And we're somewhat independent from the city. I mean, by somewhat, I mean, I get my paycheck from the city, no question about that. But our commission is separate and independent. There are 15.
The mayor and the council can't tell you what to do.
They can't tell the commissioners what to do, but the commissioners are appointed by the mayor and approved by council.
Okay.
So there is some politics or political action, but not direct influence. And some of our commissioners are very independent and independent-minded. And fortunately, we've had like a very wide swath of commissioners from all different kinds of walks of life that really come together and work as a whole team.
So you as an investigator have been able to sometimes prove at least some discrimination or partial discrimination.
Yes, yes.
And in many of the categories, race, disability, and the rest of them that you mentioned.
Those are the most common that I've seen, race, disability, usually for service animal, because that seems to be the cutting edge of just where we're going. Some age. And I tell you what, usually we don't see people that admit outright, but I have had one case where, person outright says that, I don't want to work with these people. So that's usually a good indicator of what the real intent is, which goes back to your question of evidence. How do you prove these things? Well, not only do I ask for data, I conduct interviews. It's a lot of back and forth like that. But again, seeing how others are treated. So I look for comparators a lot of the time. So if you think you've been treated differently because, say, your race, I look for other tenants or other workers, depending on the realm, and then I ask them, like, how do you identify, and see what the policy is. Have you experienced this treatment? Have you been treated the same? A lot of times we'll see people who are maybe evicted from their home after filing or asking for reasonable accommodations, but then another tenant in the building who didn't ask for accommodation, so isn't disabled, wasn't evicted. So,
okay, fascinating. So where are you from originally?
I'm from Bloomfield, so I know that's its own kingdom in Pittsburgh itself.
Yes, it is. And where did you go to school?
I actually went to high school when it was still Peabody, Highlanders for life, and Kappa. So I spent 2 years at each. So makes for a pretty unique experience.
But if you had an artsy-fartsy background, that wouldn't necessarily, one would think, lead to what you're doing now. But you got into the law eventually, did you not?
I did. So I went to undergrad at American University in D.C., and then I came back to Pittsburgh because whoever leaves, right?
Well, there's a law that you have to come back. Yeah,
yes. We have homing beacons.
Right.
And and it's funny because I'm actually back in Bloomfield, but I went to Duquesne Law School and graduated from there, and then I spent 5 years in nowhere, PA, in a very small rural county where there's about 43,000 people in the whole county.
But you did legal work there, and then you came back to the city and got this job.
Yes.
Did you study under Dr. Wecht at all at Duquesne?
I did, Professor Wecht, and this is a funny story, actually. I took philosophy of law, which was his class at the time. And David Wecht, not his dad. I actually didn't take his dad's class.
Okay, you took David Wecht, the son, who is now a Supreme Court justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I should clarify that there's generations of teachers there, although the teachers are there for generations too. But I was in Justice Wecht's class on the philosophy of law. And he and I were discussing how you start with something basic like the Constitution, then you branch out to statutes, then you branch out to regulations and case law, and how those are like the leaves on the tree when it comes to the spread of law. And I actually made a reference to the Tanakh, which is a collection of Jewish scripture. And I just remember we were talking about it. I said, yeah, it works in the same way that you start with the basics and then you spread out. And he said, you know, Rita, you're the first non-Jew I've ever heard use that correctly in such an analogy.
Awesome.
So,
that was a red letter day for you. So, and your family has a history in city government.
yes. My grandfather was a firefighter at Station Number 4. It's still Station Number 4 in Uptown. It's one of the ones that hasn't changed a whole lot. He was really big in the Firemen's Union, and he actually worked his way up to captain, and as far as we know, he's actually one of the first Italian-American captains to get the job.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then he retired, I believe, in the late 70s, and then my dad worked for the city government in, I think maybe about 2000 to about 2012.
Okay.
And he worked part of the time in the controller's office and part of the time in Department of Finance. The big thing that he really liked to do as far as projects went was the assessment appeals and all the research that went into that, how assessments could be valued, whether seniors were getting pushed out of their homes. The controller's office did a lot of work at that time when in the late 90s we sort of had the reassessment come in.
Yeah, I remember that. And everybody and their grandmother wanted a reassessment because they felt that their original assessments were sky high.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've also had to handle assessments outside of the city, but in front of the same Board of Appeals. And the difference in some of the buildings, if you were classified as one side of the highway, even if your property value didn't actually go up, you were assessed at triple or quadruple the rate just based on your zip code.
So is your family happy that you're carrying on the tradition of working in government?
Yes, yes. I think my mom is just happy I didn't become a teacher like her.
And is that right? Why? Did she sour on the profession eventually?
She was a teacher for 41 years.
Oh, okay.
And I think she was just like, nope, that's enough of that. I've done enough for the entire family.
I understand. And are you a sports fan at all?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a convert to hockey. I'm actually originally a huge football fan, and I still love the Steelers. But my husband is a big hockey fan, and up until maybe about 2 years ago, I think they finally gave up their season tickets. But my husband and one of his brothers had season tickets for about 40 years.
All right, but he's from Wisconsin, do I remember that correctly?
He's from Westmoreland County, so
very close.
Far,
not at all.
yeah.
I don't know who I'm thinking of. All right, so you don't have conflicts with you both love the sport, same teams.
Yeah. So actually, it was kind of cute. I had a crush on my husband, but he didn't know that I liked him. But I knew he liked hockey, so I started watching and following hockey, so I'd have a reason to talk to him.
Really?
So yeah, you got to think long.
Were you guys like coworkers?
No, we met in choir. We met at St. Mary the Mount. We met in church choir. He sang bass, and I sang alto.
So will he be surprised at this revelation? Did he not know that you were stalking him for all that time before?
I didn't tell him that right away.
Okay.
I eventually told him,
right.
This is one of the ways I found out how to talk to you. Because I asked him out first.
Okay.
And he said no for a whole year before he finally said yes.
Man, you are persistent.
I was like, hey,
and I'm sure you are in your legal work as well. So that's what makes you good at it.
Yeah, right.
That's fantastic. So would you recommend a career in city government and in the kind of stuff that you're doing to anybody else?
Yes, I like what I do. We're really fortunate that we have a good staff. I really like the guidance my director gives. And it's more of a team atmosphere, again, because we are so small. And we could easily get overwhelmed with our caseload. We never know what's going to come in the door. We never know how fast. It could be, 3 that come in at one time. It could be 50. And all we can do is work together to plan for it. But I really feel like I get to make decisions, not only for my own caseload, but how we better the office as a whole. Or if there's legislative issues that come up, our director is very receptive to that, because it's one of the other things the commission does outside of individual casework. It looks at improving policies and improving the code and city code and regulations itself.
Rita Porterfield, you're a credit to your profession, and the city's lucky to have you.
Thank you very
really
much.
nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too.
We will be back with another city employee on City Talk in a moment.
I'm Pittsburgh's 311 manager, Wendy Urbanik. We are happy to help with any City of Pittsburgh non-emergency questions or concerns. Requests can be sent anonymously if you do not require a response. Please keep in mind that the more detailed information you can provide, the better we will be able to assist. All service requests sent with a valid email address will be sent an email response providing your ticket number for tracking purposes. Should a service request be generated by your submission, one of our 311 representatives will provide a service request ID number. All weekday calls from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. are answered by a live operator. Inside the city, call 311. Outside the city, call 412-255-2621. Get the MyBurg app for Android and iOS. It is Pittsburgh's 24/7 resource to notify us about non-emergency issues. You can also submit requests by tweeting us at PGH311. Thank you.
Welcome back to City Talk. Now meet a member of the Geographic. Will you tell the title, Zoe Burns? What is the title of your team?
Geographic Information Systems.
Geographic Information Systems. Could that sound any more official government?
Probably not.
That is a government-sounding job right there.
Right.
And so what does that mean? What do you do?
We create 3D and 2D maps. We manage the data that goes behind those maps. We also run web services such as like Cartograph, and we do addressing for the city.
So, but among your many duties is map making. You are a
Right.
maker of maps.
Right.
How did you develop an interest in making maps?
I had to take a class when I was going to school, and I fell in love with it. My brother's a programmer, so being involved in computer programs has always been something I've loved to do. So it kind of just worked for me.
So this is all on computer?
Right. We don't really do anything by hand.
Where did you go to school, and why did you have to take the course for map making?
I went to school in Florida. It's called Stetson University, and my major was environmental studies, and so that was just classes that you took within it.
But you're from here originally?
Right, yeah. I was born and raised here, and all my family's here, so.
Where'd you grow up?
All around the city. I've lived in Squirrel Hill, I've lived in Mexican War Streets, I've lived all over the place.
I live very near the Mexican War Streets, but those are both cool neighborhoods. Do you have a favorite neighborhood among them, or do you not want to pick a favorite because then the others will feel slighted? Okay.
I've probably lived in at least 5 or 6 different neighborhoods.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Is there one you didn't like? No. You don't have to answer that
No.
either.
I love them all.
All right, and then you went to high school here, but you went to Florida to go to school.
Correct.
Took that course in the midst of your environmental studies, came back here. How'd you find out about this job?
I was debating whether to stay in Florida or come back here, and I thought if I was going to make my mark somewhere, it should be where I grew up. And I saw it was posted for working for the city, which I thought was great, and I can make an impact. So I applied.
Do you regret it because winters are cold? Because I used to live in Florida, and I regret it. I love Pittsburgh, by the way. But.
Oh yeah, I love Pittsburgh. Yeah. If I could move everything I love to Pittsburgh to Florida's weather, it'd be perfect. But there's more pros here than the weather.
Should we look into that, trying to move the city of Pittsburgh to the state of Florida somehow?
If we could do that, that'd be awesome. Get best of both worlds.
Well, I'll talk to some council people and the mayor and see if they think that's feasible. So back to map making. Who wants maps?
We work with anyone from the public up to the state. So
if I want a map of the north side.
Right, you could request it.
It costs me a couple of bucks or some sort of small fee?
Yeah, if you're from the public, we have a reasonable hourly rate. But if you're within the city of Pittsburgh government, then it's all included.
So if I want a map of the north side, but highlighting the best restaurants, do you do that sort of thing?
We have a very extensive database, and anything we don't have, we could probably create. So yeah, we can basically do about anything.
Do you recall what kind of requests people have been asking for, either within the government or without?
Yeah, I've made voting district maps for when voting. Sometimes the public wants a big map so people know which booth, which street to go on. Made stuff for fire department, police department. Basically, you name it, we've done it.
And as well as a request from individuals.
Right.
What kind of stuff do people just from out there in the community want?
Oh, all kinds of things, really. Like you said, restaurants, local amenities, art locations.
Oh, art.
things-
I see what
yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if a lot of people don't even know that this service exists if they wanted a map.
Yeah, I mean, we are accessible. That's our number one priority, is working with the public, and we'd love to get more public requests. But yeah, I wonder if people probably don't know we exist.
And you fell in love with map making. For some reason, of all the things I think that a young person in college might fall in love with, I wouldn't necessarily think map making.
Yeah.
Let's make some maps, man.
When I saw it on my schedule, I was like, oh, great, like
Right.
map making. And then when I actually got into it, I found it so interesting. And like I said, I love working with computers, and there's Python behind like coding behind everything we do. So that was something I already grew up kind of being around. So it was like a natural fit.
Interesting. So you start with sort of a blank map, I assume, and then you fill in the blank, so to speak.
Right, yeah. We have a lot of information already, and then anything we don't have, we create that data.
So you've been in government for less than a year?
Yeah, I think 6 months.
And how do you find it? Do you find a bunch of lazy, worthless bureaucrats, or are you surprised to find dedicated professionals?
Well, coming from private, which was my previous experience, I thought it might be like that, but it's not like that at all. Most people actually really care about what goes on in the city. Everyone wants to make a difference, and they come to work wanting to do something. So no, there's not really a lot of people just sitting around doing nothing.
That's nice to know, isn't it?
Yeah, it is nice to know.
We're both taxpayers. We're
Right.
not just bureaucrats.
Right, so being a taxpayer, I mean, it's nice to see it's not getting wasted. Everyone really does care that stuff is getting done.
And would you recommend a career in government service for your peers?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, if you're going to do something for your life, you might as well make an impact in the community you live in.
Well said. Well, Zoe Burns, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
a guest on City Talk.
Thank you.
And that is this edition of City Talk. We will see you next time.